Mr. Newbury, do we have anybody online?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We have several in attendance.
Okay.
Many of them petitioners, but some others as well.
Okay, great. So I want to welcome everybody to tonight's City of Wildwood's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for July 19th of 2021. On tonight's agenda, we have 3 letters of recommendation, 1 information report, 1 site development plan recommendation, and 2 other items. So I'll move on to the approval of the minutes from Monday, June 7th. Do you have a motion to approve? Yes.
Mr. Chair, can we, I apologize for interrupting. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Oh, okay. Yes. I'm sorry. We can do
Commission
that.
members.
Roll call. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Helfrey, Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Cohn, Commissioner Broyles.
Here.
Commissioner Beatty.
Here.
Commissioner Depler. Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Chair Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I got a little ahead of myself after I asked if anybody else was joining us. So we'll move into the approval of the meeting minutes from June 7th, 2021. Need a motion and a second.
I make a motion that we accept those minutes.
Commissioner Broyles
I'll second.
and Councilman Bros second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, 1 abstention. Minutes pass. So moving on, the department have any opening remarks? Mr. Vunich.
No, Mr. Chair, but I just want to thank each of the commission members for being in attendance tonight, as well as our city administrator, city attorney, and Mr. Newbury. We can't do the meetings without all of you, so thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Newbury, to the public comment session. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This time, I'd just like to give the instructions to those in attendance via Zoom. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature or put something in the chat for the department to see that you'd like to speak, and we will promote you in the order that you raised your hand. Mr. Chair, we do have a hand raised. I believe it's Mr. Markwart.
Okay.
I'll be promoting him to panelist.
And Mr. Chair, while Mr. Morcourt is promoted to panelist, to him and any others that might want to speak under the general public comment category, we do limit public comment to no more than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Markwart.
I'm sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Scott Markwart. My address is 162 Strecker Road in Ward 4. And I want to thank all of you for being in attendance this evening. Your dedication to the city of Wildwood is greatly appreciated. I know there's some confusion regarding the Ellisville Superfund site and how it can relate to other things going on in the city at this time. So I'd like to take just a couple minutes of your time to provide you some information that I compiled regarding that. A Superfund site is an informal name for a law that was enacted by Congress in 1980. And the law establishes who must pay for remediation of environmentally contaminated properties. And this same law protects future owners from the costs of paying for that remediation. Under this law, there are 2 different kinds of response actions that are authorized. There's a short-term response action, which is an immediate response, and there's a long-term remedial response that permanently reduces or eliminates the threat of any danger associated with those releases of contamination. So in Wildwood, there is something called the Ellisville Superfund site. While it's called the Ellisville site, it's mostly within the city of Wildwood. There's a small portion of it that is in Ellisville. Within this Ellisville Superfund site, there are 3 completely independent properties. They're called operable units. And an operable unit is just a distinct area that has specific site problems. Within the Ellisville Superfund site, there's operable unit 1, which is referred to as the Rosalie subsite, and that is west of Cox Creek and south of Clayton Road. There's OU2, which is often referred to as the Bliss or Bliss Strecker Forest subsite. And there's OU3, which is often referred to as the Callahan property or the Callahan subsite. And this is south of Strecker Road. I hope that you all received my notes this evening. There are 2 pages of maps there for you so that you can refer to those. So now it's important to remember that each of these 3 operable units are treated separately under federal law, under the CERCLA law. Operable Unit 1, which was the Rosalie subsite, that is west of Cox Creek, south of Clayton Road. There were approximately 200 barrels, as well as many 1 and 5 gallon buckets of chemical waste that were dumped, and some of that leaked into Cox Creek. There was a cleanup performed there in the early 1980s, and during that cleanup, no dioxin was ever detected on that site. The second subsite, OU2, or Operable Unit 2, is the Bliss subsite. It consists of multiple contiguous properties, mostly centered around 149 Strecker Road. That's all on the north side of Strecker, at the big bend in Strecker Road. There's numerous dump sites here. The main contaminant of concern is dioxin. There were cleanup actions performed in 1981, 1996, 2014, and there's still additional cleanup actions that are needed at that site. Remember, the EPA is directed under their law to perform short-term actions to protect the human health, and that is what was done at that site. OU3, or Operable Unit 3, is the Callahan subsite, and that consists of 210 Strecker Road. That's on the south side of Strecker Road. There were almost 50 samples of soils taken, as well as water and other media, and at no point was dioxin ever detected at that site. It included 1 dump area of paint and paint-related products that measured about 150 by 150 feet, and that was contaminated by Grover Callahan when he dumped barrels of paint near a barn in the center of his property. Now, it's important to note that the barn that is currently on that property was not there at the time. The barn referenced is a barn that's visible in the picture that I included from 1981. A human health risk assessment was performed, and the EPA, along with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, has determined that everyone is safe from that site, and there's no additional concerns. So the Rosalie subsite is now a subdivision. The actual spots of contamination includes several homes. The Bliss subsite is the north side of Strecker. That's where there is dioxin contamination. And the EPA says that property is not safe and additional cleanup actions are needed there. And OU3, which is the Callahan subsite, the EPA deleted OU3 from their list of priorities because everyone is safe and it meets the criteria for unlimited use and unrestricted exposure. So in conclusion, as evidenced by the 3 different operable units, they are unique in their location, their contaminants, and their cleanup actions. I don't claim to be an environmental expert. I just spent hundreds of hours compiling information and want to be able to provide you an avenue to access that. Prior to my purchase of the former Callahan site, my wife and I spent considerable time and money researching the safety of the property, in addition to hiring consultants to give their opinion. Since March, I've spent hundreds of hours compiling information that is available at 210strecker.com. And I'm available to answer any questions, and I'll be here for the remainder of the meeting for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Mr. Newbury.
Mr. Chair, I would just note that we do have a number of folks in attendance on Zoom, about 12. I'll give the instruction one more time. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature or put something in the chat. Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any indication from any of those in attendance that they wish to speak during the public comment session.
Give it another minute for the controls. Seeing no other comments for the public comment session, we'll move on to item number 1 on old business. Mr. Newbury, are you reading PZ 8-21?
Mr. Lee, sorry, we're going to play musical chairs tonight.
Okay. Mr. Vunich, I'll let you start out PZ 8-21.
Thank you, sir. PZ 8-21, 2531 Lindy Lane, Jeffrey Melvin, 405 Indian Ridge Estates, Wildwood, Missouri, 63069. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban resident district to the R3 10,000 square foot resident district upon a property that is 0.39 acres in size, which is located on the west side of Lindy Lane, north of Manchester Road. Locator number 24V 530221, street address 2531 Lindy Lane. The subject property is designated a neighborhood edge district under the current town center regulating plan. Proposed use, one single family dwelling on the existing non-conforming lot. This particular property is located in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newbury, you have a presentation for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is prepared for your consideration tonight an informational report with recommendation for the request that was just read into the record. The request involves a single lot that is accessed by Lindy Lane. Lindy Lane is a historic subdivision that was established in the 1900s, long before more modern St. Louis County and City of Wildwood zoning and subdivision laws. There is an existing dwelling on the property that is circa 1940. The petitioner purchased the property and is intending to remove the existing dwelling in order to construct a new single family dwelling on the lot for his residence. Since the lot is in town center, the current zoning could be accommodated, could be considered compliant, but would create issues related to setback requirements, lot frontages, etc. The lot is a legal lot of record. However, a rezoning request is required in association with the new dwelling to bring it into compliance in regards to the town center plan's design standards, as well as its architectural guidelines. In the report, the department covers its analysis identifying certain components of the proposed rezoning request and its compliance to the neighborhood edge district, which is the land use category designation for the site in the town center's regulating plan. The department's recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission is to support the change in zoning fully compliant to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district. This support would allow the removal of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new single family residence. The department would like to note one item, that being the public space requirements typically associated with developments such as this, particularly in the town center area. The department believes that in this instance, the application of the city's public space requirements is difficult and therefore is recommending the commission recommend approval of the request conditioned on the dedication of a 10-foot wide public easement along the property's frontage for the purpose of a future sidewalk or trail facility. And the commission members may recall this was an approach that the commission took with a previous change in zoning for a lot on the east side of Lindy Lane. Therefore, the department tonight, you have a report with a favorable recommendation regarding the rezoning of a property from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district to allow a new single family dwelling on the lot. And with that, Mr. Chair, the department concludes its presentation, and after a motion in a second, we're opening the floor for discussion is available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. I'll open this up for a motion or discussion? Commissioner Beatty,
Motion to approve the department's recommendation.
do we have a motion?
Second.
Member Boland, second. So I think we can do this as a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, the department would respectfully request a roll call.
Oh, okay, I see that now. All right, so we'll go back and do the roll call. Mr. Newbury, or Mr. Vunich, I'll let you.
Thank you. Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Broyles,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Chairley,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to PZ 9-21.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 9-21, Rebecca and Chad Seifert, 1626 Garden Valley Drive, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038, are seeking review and action of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the requested installation of an outdoor game court that will be 25 feet by 25 feet in size and to be located at 1626 Garden Valley Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 21V 130181, R1 1 acre resident district with a planned environment unit, PEU. The request is to be reviewed in accordance with chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning code, which establishes standards and requirements for outdoor game courts relating to their consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. In this instance, the proposed game court is to be situated on this 0.54 acre parcel of ground to the south of the existing single-family dwelling located on the subject property. The Department of Planning will have a recommendation report on this request prepared for consideration at this meeting, the meeting being tonight. This property is located in Ward 3. And I would note that a representative, I believe Ms. Seifert, is in attendance. So if anyone would have questions for her, she can be promoted to panelist.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newbury, turn it over for presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department will begin its presentation with a brief slideshow to provide context of the subject site. Take a moment to pull that up. Start at the beginning. The first slide shows the lot identified here in a light blue rectangle along Garden Valley Drive. Of course, this is State Route 109. The next slide photograph shows the plot plan with the home fronting onto, showing the home fronting onto Garden Valley Drive and the proposed location of the 25-foot by 25-foot outdoor game court. And you can see here as well, the petitioner sketched on some proposed landscaping. It's more of a concept than an actual plan. I'll address that later in the department's presentation. The next slide is a photograph of the backyard area looking to the south towards the towards a natural drainage way area in these trees. The next slide photograph is the location, the proposed location of the small game court. You can, if you'll note the retaining wall kind of tapering off here, you'll see another view of that in the next slide. And again, this shows the outdoor game court location area, this being where the trees are, the eastern property line. And then this is looking to the west. The work that you see occurring on the site was permitted by the city, and it is an in-ground pool that is supported by this retaining wall. With this slide up, the department would note that the proposed basketball hoop will be placed at this end of the site, interior to the subject lot, not towards the neighboring property. And we'll conclude with slideshow presentation there. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is prepared for your consideration a report with recommendation regarding a proposed outdoor game court on a property within the Garden Valley Farm subdivision. The proposed outdoor game court is planned to be placed on the property that is slightly more than 1/2 acre in area. The department's recommendation is a favorable for this outdoor game court, which is a half-court basketball court. The placement of the court is in the rear of the home behind the single-family dwelling and will not be visible from the street, Garden Valley Drive. The property owner, as I mentioned in the slideshow presentation, has acknowledged the need to place landscaping at the eastern end of the proposed game court. The recommended approval is conditioned upon the petitioner providing a landscape plan to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Planning prior to the issuance of any permits associated with the court. Would note that another key consideration is the impact of additional impervious surface on stormwater management on the site. The Department of Public Works attended a site visit with the Department of Planning and the property owners, and after that site visit did not express any concerns regarding the impact of this improvement on neighboring properties as it relates to stormwater. However, prior to the issuance of any permits for the outdoor game court, that will be verified through the Department of Public Works grading permit process. The petitioner noted that they have not yet engaged the homeowners association of the Garden Valley Farm subdivision. However, the trustees did state to the department, as well as I believe the homeowner, that the homeowners association authorization wouldn't be given until the city's authorization was complete. In this regard, the department is recommending the commission grant approval condition on the verification of the authorization of homeowners association prior to the issuance of any necessary permits for its construction. In summary, the department is recommending approval of the proposed outdoor game court conditioned on the 3 items that I identified: the grade process being completed, the required landscaping plan being provided to the department and approved by it, and the authorization from the homeowners association. And Mr. Chair, with that, this department concludes its presentation, and with a motion and a second, we're opening the floor up for discussion. It's available for any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. I'll open this up for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chair, while the commission is thinking about questions or a motion, I would note that Mr. Seifert is on the Zoom call tonight and has his hand raised.
I'll move forward with Commissioner Broyles first.
I will wait until I hear
Okay,
the speaker.
then let's move to the applicant, Mr. Seifert.
Mr. Chair, I just promoted him to panelist. It should take another.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
We're just available if you had any questions.
Commissioner Broyles.
I make the motion as recommended by the Department of Planning for PZ 220.
Commissioner Beatty as a second. City Administrator, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one question for the commission to consider. Was there any proposed lighting associated with this court, Mr. Vunich? Any outdoor lighting?
No, sir. I believe Mr. Newbury had in his report, but did not mention that there is no proposed lighting. Lighting of outdoor game courts is only allowed by the commission in the non-urban resident district for obvious reasons. Mr. Chair, I would also note that one of the trustees, at least one of the trustees of the homeowners association is in attendance tonight. And I don't know if she wants to speak or not, but certainly Ms. Stevens is on the call tonight.
Okay, thank you. I have one comment. It's fairly basic. It looks like you've added a pool to the back, and then with the game court, when you, or I guess, as far as the paperwork goes, Mr. Vunich, can we have them update it with the pool and then show the game court to actual scale on a drawing?
Yes, as part of the process, we'll get much better detailed plan, and that'll be necessary not only for the department's authorization, but for the grading permit required by the Department of Public Works. But thanks for the reminder. It's always appreciated.
So, Mayor Boland.
Just to be clear, so if the motion passes, it is subject to approval by the homeowners association trustees, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll let Mr. Newbury answer. I apologize.
And Joe, yes, Mr. Mayor, that is a condition of the report. And the commission authorized another outdoor game court a few months ago in the same subdivision. And we were able to work with the trustees and the management company to make sure that they approved it prior to the city issuing any permits.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further comments? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, just a matter of process for future ones. Is there, it's a chicken or egg thing. So the trustee said city has to approve first before we do. But wouldn't the trustees approve before the city, or is this a normal thing? And do they all go this way, that we approve, then the trustees approve of the subdivision? I'm just thinking in the future, so it's uniform. Like, here's the process. You do it this way every time.
Mayor
I think
Boland.
Mayor Boland's jumping in.
It can go either way. It depends on what the trustees want to do, and it depends on what the city wants to do.
And we don't care. Okay, I don't care if no one cares. I just always like the same process if you can tell someone. So, okay, I'm good.
Mr. Young has a screen on. Maybe he can interject.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that obviously the intent of the city in requiring as a condition approval of a homeowners association is simply more a reminder. The city can't delegate to the homeowners association the approval or denial. It is just a reminder that they do have to go through that step and should not do so. But the city does not enforce homeowners association covenants and restrictions.
Thankfully.
Thank you for the clarification. Mayor Boland.
Yeah, well, for further clarification, though, if in this case, for example, and I'm not suggesting that this should occur, I'm just talking with you, City Attorney Young, relative to your point, if this motion passes and the homeowners association decides against it, based on the jurisdiction of the homeowners association solely, not the city, the game court would not occur, correct? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
That would be the city enforcing the homeowners association's covenants and restrictions and denying it, and that we can't delegate that authority to them to ultimately approve or deny. So it truly is more of just a reminder that they need to go through that process.
Okay, so are you saying it's just a fait accompli, and that if this motion passes, then the trustees of that subdivision, whatever they decide, doesn't really matter?
No, it certainly matters. It does.
I mean, does it matter in terms of whether they get to put it in, I guess?
Well, and again, it's not a fait accompli. I mean, obviously there are various conditions, but the ultimate issue is the city can't delegate to the HOA whether they do or do not get authority from the city's perspective. The city has to determine whether or not it meets the requirements of the code. And if it meets the requirements of the code, it's either approved or denied.
Okay, John, we're dancing around it. So if this motion passes, my question is, and it's a yes or no, if the trustees of that subdivision do not want the game court to be installed, does it get installed? That's yes or no.
The city, the answer is their approval or denial does not stop the city from issuing permits concurrent or consistent with the action this evening. So the answer is, the city cannot enforce the subdivision covenants and restrictions. So If you approve it tonight with that condition and they deny it, the city can't say no because they denied it.
Okay, I think my common knowledge of this is that the subdivision has final say within the covenants at the end of the day.
They absolutely do.
There you
but
go.
The city cannot enforce it is what.
Correct. So they trump it. If they say no, then we have no power to say you can go ahead and do it.
Is that correct, John?
Well, think of them as two completely separate things.
Okay, so I'm just, with all due respect, I'm going to make a motion to postpone because I'm not getting, if you can't tell me, this is very important with that subdivision in particular, with the closeness of the lots. If this is really a matter, with all due respect, that I think while we as a city obviously look at these things and need to, and I want to accommodate the Seiferts to the extent we can, but it is ultimately their subdivision and they're part of that. So if you're John Young, if you're not able to tell me that, yes, the trustees, if they do not approve this, it does not get constructed, I'm going to make a motion to postpone until the trustees come back with a recommendation as to what they want.
I can tell you definitively, if the trustees do not approve it, so long as they're complying with the requirements of their indentures, they can stop them from building it.
Okay. Okay. So that's fair enough. And again, my apology to the Seiferts. This is sort of a broader issue. I just want to make sure that that we're taking care of it. So I think what Commissioner Jackson said is the case, that the trustees ultimately have the say relative to their indentures, not the city's rules, but their indentures and how they interpret them as to whether it goes in. So with that, I'm good. No motion to postpone. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Jackson.
The Seiferts have their hand raised. I'll go back to the applicant.
I just wanted to inform the board that I guess about a year ago, we had proposed to the proposed to the homeowners association for the sport court. And for clarification, it's a quarter court. It's consistent with the code, and they referred us to the planning commission. So as far as the homeowners association was concerned, at least from what they, the documentation that we have from them, the chicken and the egg argument, they were saying the planning commission was first, and then we go to the homeowners association.
So,
Mayor Boland.
So thank you for that information, Ms. Seifert. The reason that I was engaging in that conversation with our city attorney is because the city has a different set of rules that it looks at when something like this is coming before the commission, as it is tonight, versus a homeowners association. And in some cases, those can be widely different. But I think ultimately, and particularly in a subdivision as one like yours is developed, it should require both. And so that was my point. The rules are not, and I think the city attorney was also making this point, the rules aren't the same. So they can't really delegate to us and we can't really delegate to them. So this approval is for the city's approval, and their approval needs to be done by the trustees of that subdivision, because we have different rules and things that we look at as part of those rules. Joe, is that a fair assessment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, very much so.
Okay, thank you. So just for your information, I just wanted to mention that. So,
Commissioner Beatty.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as someone who's sat on trustees on the boards of HOAs most of my home ownership life, if for whatever reason, if the HOA didn't approve and they built it, the HOA would have the power to levy fines and liens on the house until they corrected whatever was wrong with it. And so when Mr. Young was saying that the city can't enforce the HOA's covenants, the HOA can enforce their own covenants, and they have their own power to bring everything under the way they would like.
So I'd say we could go on with a vote, in my opinion. This Seifert, I'm just reading the virtual room. I think you're going to be fine. I'll be highly embarrassed if it's not fine, but I think we're ready to vote here.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. There is no further comments. We'll go into a roll call vote. Mr.
Thank
Vunick,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Bowen.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Vunick, are you reading PZ 20-21?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. PZ 20-21, Jennifer and Stuart Smith, 18528 Bridal Gate Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63068. And zip code doesn't look right, but we'll check that. Are seeking the review and action of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the requested installation of an outdoor game court that will be 30 feet by 60 feet in size and to be located at 18528 Bridal Gate Lane, St. Louis County, locator number 27X 240084, NU Non-Urban Resident District. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Code, which establishes standards and requirements for outdoor game courts relating to their construction by the Planning and Zoning Commission. In this instance, the proposed game court is to be situated on this 4.4 acre parcel of ground to the south of the existing single-family dwelling located on the subject property. The department will have a recommendation report on this request prepared for consideration at this meeting, the meeting being tonight. This particular property is located in Ward 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunick. Mr. Newbury, moving to the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department will again begin its presentation regarding this item with a very brief slideshow. The first slide is just an aerial shot of the area of Wildwood where the lot is located. The lot is highlighted here in blue. Hankin Road forms a portion of its southern boundary. Allenton Road is here, and this here begins the Greensfelder County Park. This is a plot plan of the overall lot, just showing the home itself, footprint of the home itself, and then a sketch of the outdoor game court here. What we'll follow are a few photographs of the area of the site where the game court is planned. These photographs are being provided just to demonstrate to the commission the topography of the site is being very flat with limited grading needed to install a game court. This is looking to the north. It's being the rear of the single family home. And this is looking inward to the site. The fence you see is along Hankin Road. As far as I can gather, the petitioner provided the photographs. And with that last photograph, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is prepared for your consideration a report with recommendation regarding a proposed outdoor game court on a 4.4 acre property located in the Bridal Spur Estates subdivision. The department has prepared a favorable recommendation for this outdoor game court. The court is planned to be located entirely behind the large single family dwelling and will not be visible from Bridal Gate Lane or Hankin Road at the southern boundary of the site. The location of the court is compliant with the city's requirements, being placed outside of the rear and side yard setback areas. There are no trees planned to be removed to accommodate the court, and no lighting is planned in association with it. I do want to mention the outdoor game court. The purpose of it is for a pickleball court. The property owner did contact the homeowners association trustees, and the department received a correspondence from them expressing support for the proposed game court. Additionally, the department asked the Department of Public Works to review the placement of the court as well as the topography of the site to see if it had any concerns regarding stormwater on the site. The Department of Public Works did not, following their review. However, the condition of the approval is that a grading permit process be completed for the completion of this court. And lastly, given the size of the lot and the placement of the court, the department is not recommending any landscaping or fencing be required, since any ball or projectile will likely, almost certainly will remain on the subject lot, and no visual screen of the court from neighboring properties is necessary. In conclusion, the department is recommending approval of the proposed outdoor game court. And with that, Mr. Chair, with a motion in a second, we're open the floor for discussion. We're available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. I'll open this up for discussion and or motion. Mayor Boland.
Motion to approve the department's recommendation for the game court.
And Commissioner Beatty as a second.
Mr. Chair, I would note that Mr. Stewart is on the call tonight as an attendee. If there are any questions regarding the game court or the property, I could certainly promote him to panelist if you'd like.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. Mr. Vunich, roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Boland.
Yes.
The motion is approved by a vote of 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, PZ 21-21. Mr. Vunich, are you handling this?
The music swung to the other chair.
Oh, okay. I'll turn it over to Mr. Newbury.
I was going to make a similar joke.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 21-21, Debbie and Peter Rademeyer, 17808 Suzanne Ridge Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63038, are seeking the review and action of the Planning and Zoning Commission to retain an existing outdoor game court that is 30 feet by 65 feet in size and to be located at 17808 Suzanne Ridge Drive, St. Louis, locator number 214-430-362, R1 1 acre residence district with a planned environment unit, PEU. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning code, which establishes standards and requirements for the outdoor game courts relating to their consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. In this instance, the existing game court is to be situated on this 0.42 acre parcel of ground to the east of the existing single-family dwelling located on the subject property. The Department of Planning will have a recommendation report on this request prepared for consideration at this meeting. Ward 3.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think a key point to start the department's presentation is an acknowledgement that the current property owners did not install this outdoor game court. It was the previous owner or owners and the Rademeyers, the current petitioner in this case, petitioners, purchased the property with the outdoor game court in place. I don't want anyone on the Planning and Zoning Commission to think that the current petitioners had proceeded forward without the benefit of a permit or permits necessary for such. Additionally, I would note that prior to the presentation of the outdoor game court tonight to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Rademeyers, the petitioners, did present a request to the Board of Adjustment for the necessary variances to accommodate the current location within what is described as the rear yard setback. That occurred at the June meeting of the Board of Adjustment. So when I share screen, hopefully it'll work. Bear with me a second here. Mr. Newbury, can you assist? Because it's not working for me.
I'm having a little bit of trouble myself. Give me a moment to see if I can get it a different way.
Thank you. My apologies. I promise you, Mr. Newbury and I talked about this before the meeting tonight. But sometimes the best laid plans. Well, suffice to say, while we work on that, the retaining wall, which at its highest point is 8.5 feet above grade at the corner of the game court that extends into the setback, was addressed by our Board of Adjustment. The, bless your heart, Mr. Newbury. Well, to give you some characteristics about the property, it is 18,000 square feet in size. Generally, that's an approximate. It's a little more than 18,000 square feet in size. The property is zoned R1 1 acre resident district with a planned environment unit, a PEU. That zoning by St. Louis County prior to the incorporation of the city. But for all intents and purposes, the project was done under City of Wildwood guidance, but again, having to utilize this St. Louis County PEU, the planned environment unit. The game court will be 65 feet by 30 feet in size, equating to just over 2,000 square feet. It has what roughly I would describe as a northwest to southeast orientation on the lot. And if you have had a chance to look at the attachments that were part of the department's report, you can see again, it is located in the corner of the property, the rear yard of the property. In the report, the department notes its support for this location. In identifying that support for the location, it would note that the presence of accessory uses in this particular subdivision, again, Oak Ridge Trails is prevalent. And so it's not out of the ordinary to see either in-ground swimming pools, large patios or decks, and in a few instances, outdoor game courts. The property owner has engaged the homeowners association of the Oak Ridge Trails subdivision for review of the outdoor game court. But again, the department has not received any communication. The department believes that the request can be approved based upon, again, how the wording of the indentures is relative to the city's code. The game court will not be visible from the adjoining public street, and that is a key component for any of the considerations of outdoor game courts by the Department of Planning. The location of the game court in the corner of the property, the rear corner of the property, and the existing netting and fencing ensures that projectiles stay on the petitioner's property and no one else's. The department would note that this particular location, as represented in the information that was provided as part of the recommendation report, is somewhat isolated. To the east of the outdoor game court or the rear property line of the property, it is all common ground. And as you can see from the first image that Mr. Newbury had up, that it is heavily wooded. And so from that perspective, the impact visually or in many ways is limited to minimal to none. And I did just see a chat from Mrs. Rademeyer saying that they have received HOA approval. And so I would correct the department's report saying that the HOA has approved the game court as situated. The department would note also that the variances have been granted and there is no intent to light the court, which preserves the night sky in this transition area. The department describes it as a transition area due to the fact that this is Oak Ridge Trails, but immediately to the east is a pattern of large lot, single-family dwellings, all in the NU non-urban resident district. So preservation of night sky is a key component in these transition locations. The department is recommending approval. And again, that approval is conditioned on the property owner obtaining all necessary permits required for such. Again, a grading permit will be required as part of the authorization process to ensure that stormwater management has not been impacted by the previous owner's installation. And then finally, we did identify the homeowners association requirement. And as I just stated, the petitioners, the Rademeyers, have that already in hand. Therefore, the department is recommending approval. If there are any questions regarding the department's report with recommendation, Mr. Newbury and I'd be glad to try and answer them at this time. And thank you for your attention. And again, thanks to Mr. Newbury for fishing that fish out of the lake.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open everything up for a discussion and or a motion. Commissioner Jackson.
Pretty sure I saw lights out there on one of the pictures. I don't know if that's a problem. I may not have seen it, but I could have swore I saw a pole and some lights hanging off of it. But hey, I mean,
Certainly will verify that. My apologies if I made a mistake. So again, I will need to verify.
in one of the pictures, I mean, that we just saw, I think. I saw that.
If you could maybe go back and show the photos, and then I'll move on to Mayor Boland while we're waiting.
And Mrs. Rademeyer says there is a single light. It was there when they purchased it. So my apologies.
Does that cause any issues?
Well, certainly it would require the department to obtain information regarding the lighting standard, the lamp, the illumination levels of the light itself, and then the shape of the lens, so as to ensure compliance to the outdoor lighting requirements. Also, as noted with the Seiferts, lighting is not allowed as part of any outdoor game court other than the NU non-urban resident district. Therefore, the item with the light is non-compliant to one of the regulations. So therefore, I actually
Have to
think
be
we need
removed unless there's a special exception to this.
right. And unfortunately, the Planning and Zoning Commission cannot provide that exception because the underlying regulations stipulate such. So the department would respectfully request postponement tonight.
Wait, Mayor Boland?
Well, actually, Joe, I was going to make a motion that the game court be approved on the same terms as the commission just approved of the game court in Garden Valley. And I understand from Ms. Rademeyer that the trustees have already approved that and so forth, but I think it would be good for consistency if we still retain that as one of the requirements. And I would add a fourth requirement to the motion, which would be that the lighting be removed. And so if that is the motion, before I make it, Joe, my question is, would you still want a motion to postpone, or would you be comfortable with that?
Certainly, if the commission concurs that the single light standard be removed, the department would support the recommendation it's prepared tonight because it would be consistent with such. The postponement was to ensure that the light is functional, it's not non-functional, and to correct the report so it's not inconsistent with the facts that are on the property. I would note that Ms. Rademeyer would like to speak on this matter. She is on the telephone, not on the call per se.
We'll go ahead and hear from the applicant. Joe, is there a way you can?
Well, I just lost Mr. Newbury, so hopefully,
He's figuring out.
yeah, bear with me here a second. I'll see what I can do to make this work for all of us. Well, even a blind squirrel can find a nut. Ms. Rademeyer, I believe, is on the call.
Great. Go ahead, Ms. Rademeyer.
She's on mute. There.
Okay,
There you go.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you able to hear me from my
Yes.
computer audio?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to hurry up with the broadband.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you need to turn off one of your, either your phone or your computer. This isn't working. Are you on one device or do you have two devices going?
It looks like she hung up on the phone. I don't see the phone number on the attendee list.
And Ms. Rademeyer, if you don't mind, if we can't get the audio to work, you could still use chat.
I think her service locked up.
So Joe, I think it would be best, given what she just mentioned about the retaining wall and so forth. I think the motion to postpone this so we can get a little more clarity on the lighting, and I hate to do that to them, but then her concern about the retaining wall. We're getting multiple issues on this, so I would make a motion to postpone this to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Is she looking to replace the retaining wall?
Yes, Mr. Beatty, she's had a contractor available to repair the retaining wall that is failing for several weeks now. We were unable to authorize it because of the encroachment into the setback. With the Board of Adjustments action, if there's no objection from the commission and John Young doesn't think that I'm doing something completely wrong, I would like to release the retaining wall authorization, so at least the retaining wall could be repaired. Conditioned again, if the outdoor game court is going to be retained or not.
So I guess before we do that, so there was a motion I was going to make to move forward with this, and the proviso that was different from the other one related to lighting. So if Ms. Rademeyer can simply text us and let us know if she has an objection to the approval being granted without the lighting, I think we could move forward this evening. So that if you could text us and let us know what you think about that. The retaining wall, I think, will be handled as part of the approval moving forward, because it's already been done by the Board of Adjustment and otherwise. So if you just text us and let us know what you have as a position relative to the lighting, are you okay with that being removed or not?
Can you guys hear us okay now?
Much better. There's a little bit of an echo, but the squeal isn't there.
Just turn that one off.
I'm turning.
Sorry, we're turning the other one off. I apologize for the technical problems. I mean, guys, we can consider, you're probably talking about a $5,000 or $6,000 light that's there. So I want to at least go on the record to say that, you know, we inherited this. We've been paying taxes on this court for many years, and it's getting a little disappointing. We've, you know, we keep up our yard. We have neighbors' approval. We're not, you know, causing a disruption to the neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination. So it's just, you know, we're trying to fix a problem. If you guys want to conditionally do it, I'm probably just going to get rid of the whole thing. I'm just at that point. It's just getting, the bureaucratic stuff here is just getting out of control for us, where we're just trying to solve a problem that we noticed, you know, in April, and now it's going into August.
This wall, I mean, it's a safety concern. We don't want to let our kids out there. We're afraid it's going to topple and hurt somebody. We don't let yard maintenance back there because we're afraid if those blocks start to fall, someone's going to get injured and it's our liability. We've done everything we were supposed to do. We went through the Board of Adjustments. They've approved the variance. And now which we weren't even told, we had to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That was a surprise to us when we came back from vacation and saw a new sign in our yard. To get the sport port re-approval or get a permit for an existing sport port. Like my husband said, we inherited this sport port. We've been paying taxes on it. We're literally trying to solve a safety concern. We don't want anyone in our family or anyone who happens to trespass on our property at any time get hurt when these cinder blocks or these blocks start to fall. So we are really, our number one concern is trying to get this fixed. Now, the light, which is new to us today, like this is a new topic. No one's ever said this to us before. If it's going to cost us a substantial amount of money to remove that light, then, you know, we might as well just get rid of the sport port, which is then something that we're going to have to talk about, which also isn't going to be inexpensive, which I did hear. I don't need any permits to remove something. So if that's incorrect, please let me know during this meeting.
So Mr. and Ms. Rademeyer, Mr. Chairman, may I continue with my question? So
Yes,
I just
go
want to say, I really appreciate what you're going through, and I sympathize with it. The issue that we have to consider, however, is once we grant this, even though you both are indicating, you know, how you're going to manage the sport court and what you're going to do with it, if you sell the home, once this is granted, there's no guarantee, for example, as to light, that someone doesn't leave it on 24/7, and then we start getting complaints from all your neighbors because of that. So what what we would be doing as to this transcends more than just your occupancy of that land. I guess what I would say is, if there's an immediate issue, Joe, with respect to the retaining wall, then I think your idea as to segregating that and giving approval to move forward with the retaining wall aspect of this would be in order. But relative to the light, I am very reticent, and I understand that someone else put it in and it may have cost a lot when they did it and so forth. But given what could be done with that prospectively by other owners, I would just, as to the rest of this, suggest that we postpone it, as Joe mentioned earlier, to the next meeting to get clarity and to kind of step back on the rest of this. But as to the retaining wall, if it's appropriate to segregate it, I would move that we move forward with the department's recommendation as to the retaining wall aspect for the safety reasons that Ms. Rademeyer mentioned. And as to the rest of this, that we wait until the next meeting, particularly as to the lighting, to have a further discussion.
Okay. So my one concern with that is, and I think we kind of alluded to it, is if we go and research that it's really expensive to remove, you know, the light that was already there, you know, when we bought the house, we may not want to move forward with retaining wall. So I don't want to move forward with the retaining wall necessarily until we know about this light. However, you guys only meet once a month. And so that puts us, you know, on till, you know, end of August before anything can happen.
But these are mutually exclusive, Ms. Rademeyer. With all due respect, we can't accommodate your need to do it right now as to some aspects of it, and yet also try to accommodate violation of things that may impact your neighbors if you don't do it. So I think the only option is to make a motion to postpone until the next meeting as to.
Mayor Boland, before I ask for a second, I'm not sure that we can even do anything with the light because it is not allowed in this zoning, and the Planning and Zoning Commission cannot rule on that. Anyway, it would have to be a special exception at the Board of Adjustment to make
Well,
that
that's why my
ruling.
motion had that qualification with it. I agree. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I would just move a motion to make a motion to postpone all of this, including the retaining wall, to the August meeting of the committee.
Second.
The Rademeyers and the commission in deciding on the motion. The next meeting is actually August
when?
2nd. So it's only 2 weeks.
When's the next Board of Adjustment, Joe?
Third Thursday.
August.
In August. So we're not going to be able to vote on this at the beginning of August on the light. The light is a non-conforming.
Board of Adjustment meets on August the 19th. August 19th is the next BOA meeting. Next planning and zoning is the 2nd.
So my motion to postpone would then be just as the appropriate time that we can sort all of this out. If it's after the Board of Adjustment meeting, it's after that. If it's before it, it's before it. I don't think that's a tail that needs to wag the dog. I hope it's before, because I want to accommodate the Rademeyers, but if we can and it needs to go through the Board of Adjustment, then it would be the meeting following that. That would be the motion to postpone.
Okay, so my other suggestion, I understand your motion. We have a second on it, but maybe we entertain this, that we act on this without the light, and that the light becomes a condition of the Board of Adjustment approval.
But they're saying they don't want to do that. Maybe. That's what I heard them say.
Has there been any past precedents, if you guys could let me know, on what sort of approvals have been made in the city of Wildwood, like for the lighting, that you guys are aware of?
From what I can recall, lighting is only in the NU district. So there are no exceptions under the current zoning, which your residence falls in.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
Mr. Chair, you did it better than I would have.
Yes,
So-
I didn't know, like, if there's been past precedents where they've been approved, or am I just wasting my time and I'll just get everything removed? I mean, it's, at the end of the day, I mean, I just need to figure that out, just to weigh that in. That's why I was asking if you guys were aware of any past precedents where this has even been approved.
Well, if you're, Mr. Rademeyer, if you're addressing the Board of Adjustment, each case stands on its own merits due to the unique circumstances relating to the physical characteristics of the property.
Okay.
And so even if the board had acted on a request for a light variance, it would not necessarily be applicable to your property, again, because we would just look at your individual characteristics. Which
Right.
in some instances, just the fact that you inherited this thing creates somewhat of a practical difficulty for you.
Yeah, no, I get it. I was just curious if there was anything. So thanks. I get what you're saying though.
So we have a motion and a second to postpone, or if Mayor Boland wanted to entertain my discussion of maybe voting on it without the light, if that's a possibility. But the motion currently is to postpone. Seeing no discussion, the motion on the floor is to postpone. We'll do a roll call vote on that.
Sure.
Does Jim, do you have something to say?
I was going to say, you can do a voice vote.
Okay, voice is fine.
Okay, and I guess I have a question before we vote. I just want to make sure that it, like, Mike, to your point, if the Rademeyers, do you have a preference as to postponement, or do you have or should we further discuss the possible approval provided the light's removed? What is your preference? I just want to understand that.
Thank you. I guess the everything being approved, pending the light, I guess would be acceptable, because if we decide just to get it removed, then we can move forward with everything with the permits and get everything fixed if we decide to do so. As long as we can create that exception, or maybe schedule the next meeting, I think is what you said in the third week of August. It sounds like, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So who are we getting the exception with? Is it the Board of Adjustments?
Board of Adjustments.
This isn't Board of Adjustments.
Yeah,
This
that's
is-
the third meeting of August.
Okay.
You said. Yeah. Okay.
So Mayor Boland, do you want to amend your motion?
Well, so now I think I heard something different, which is that the Rademeyers would be comfortable with my original motion, which was to approve moving forward with what has been presented by the department tonight, with the same conditions that we did the earlier one, i.e. subdivision approval and so forth, even though they may already have it, just to be consistent, and adding a fourth, which is that the light would be removed. So if they're comfortable with that, I'll go back to the original motion, but the whole commission will need to agree that we can withdraw the motion to postpone, since it's already been made and seconded. It's within the purview of the commission. So I would just ask Mr. Rademeyer or Ms. Rademeyer, are you comfortable with that being the motion?
No, just vote on the postponement, sir.
Okay, so then I'll stay with the motion to postpone. That's what I thought.
Okay, we have a motion second on postponement. Commissioner Broyle.
You're muted.
I apologize. Mr. and Mrs. Rademeyer, Mrs. Rademeyer mentioned that the safety of the wall, and you were anxious to get that repaired. Could you speak a little bit more about that in terms of this motion that's on the floor?
Well, we're still concerned about the safety of the wall, but we're trying to do things in the right order. And we would love to keep it, the sport court with the light and everything as is, but that doesn't look like that's the way it's going to go. So we'll continue to make sure, or try to do our best to make sure that nobody goes back there.
So does this motion, Mr. Mayor, does this involve are we only talking about the light? Or are we talking about the safety of the wall? Can they continue with that?
I would defer to Joe, but I think the answer would be no. This is a postponement on everything.
Okay.
So this is all sorted out, because it has, as we have seen over the last 30 plus minutes, lots of tentacles that I think should be addressed before.
Okay, that's helpful to me to clarify a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Beatty.
I'm probably just going down an unnecessary path here, but how powerful is the light? I guess it's got to be fairly powerful, but I'm just thinking about the lights I've got on the back side of my garage. At a certain height, could light up the sport court pretty well. I guess maybe it's different being over by the sport court.
It's all right, guys. It's just far away from the house, so it's in the rear of the property, and so there's 3 lights. It's fairly large, like kind of equated to a street light. Is probably the best way to describe it.
And with all due respect, the issue is if we approve the lights, then we can then put ourselves and more importantly, the neighbors in the position of, well, it's a stronger bulb and the height of it was raised. And I just do not think, with all due respect, we want to go down that road with this in a subdivision like this. So.
I mean, somebody
Technically,
already
yeah.
went down the road like 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
like I said, I'm just trying to fix the problem.
Down the road.
Mr. Young, can you weigh in on this? Because I don't think we have the authority to even approve the light.
Well, if the light is not a item that is authorized under the code in that particular zoning district, which I believe I'm hearing it is not, it is something that would require a variance. And I would ask Mr. Vunich to confirm that I'm accurately stating the requirements of the code.
Mr. Young, yes, you are. The crafting of the regulations for the outdoor game courts was premised that, at least in the non-urban resident district, the lots were larger and the separation between neighboring properties, at least their dwellings, greater, so we could accommodate it there more likely than anywhere else.
Okay, so moving on, we have a motion to postpone and a second. So, and the Rademeyers want to move forward with the postponement so that they can obtain the approvals that they need. As I am assuming, to go to the Board of Adjustment to ask for a variance for the light. That would be required before we could approve it or make a recommendation for approval. So the motion is to postpone, so we'll go for a roll call vote on postponement.
I think we can do a voice vote.
Voice, okay, we'll do voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The item is postponed.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I offer an apology to the Rademeyers and to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I can assure you several members of the Department of Planning visited the property. None explained that there was lighting. So I apologize. It's a mistake that the director is responsible for, and the delay is my responsibility as well. My apologies.
All right, thank you guys for the guidance.
Moving on, we have a site development plan. Mr. Newbury.
A review and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission on a proposed monument sign for Lafayette High School, which would replace the existing wood type version now in place at its property in U non-urban residence district, northwest corner of State Route 109 and Clayton Road, thereby acting upon said request, which is consistent with section 415.410 sign regulations for FP, PS, NU, and all R districts, Ward 5.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, hopefully with the assistance of Mr. Newbury, we'll show you what the new sign looks like. If you are not familiar, Lafayette High School occupies the southeast corner of Clayton Road and State Route 109. The high school facility and all of its accessory uses and structures is located on a 51-acre tract of land. At the intersection, that being Clayton Road and State Route 109, the class of 1987 donated a freestanding monument sign. That monument sign has been in place for a number of years, and in this area, proximity to those pine trees that are being identified by Mr. Newbury at this time. If Mr. Newbury would go to the next slide. Actually go to the rendering of the sign, please. The intent is to replace the wood sign with a masonry type sign The support for the sign will be this masonry material as described here in this particular slide. And Mr. Newbury, if you would go on to the next one, please. Next one. And it would be similar to this. It is pin-on lettering. It is not an electronic message board. It would identify the name of the school and the address of the property. It is not to be lighted, and the intent of the high school is to retain all the pine trees that are located behind the current sign, and they would be behind this sign, but remove some of the smaller shrubs out in front that are blocking a portion of the existing sign at this time. As described in the recommendation report of the department, the height, width, location, and size are all in compliance with the city's new sign regulations for freestanding monument signs on institutional properties. The mounting method is allowed, although not the preferred type, and the school is allowed to light it in several different ways. It can be internally, externally, or halo, but again, they are not planning to light the sign at this time. Therefore, based upon compliance to the key components of the sign regulations for this type of representation, the department is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission support the replacement of the existing sign with this new type. After a motion and second or discussion, the department is available for any questions or comments. I would note that the designer from InGraphics is a participant tonight. And so if there are specific questions regarding the design, I'm sure Mr. Schulte can respond more so than the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open this up for discussion or a motion. Mayor Boland.
I have a question. Thank you. Joe, relative to lighting, you mentioned just a second ago that the school did not plan to light it at this time. If the school decides to light it, does Lafayette need to return to the commission or any other body relative to doing that, or could it just do it as a result of any approval of this evening?
Mr. Mayor, based upon the requirements of our outdoor lighting regulations, the school would have to return to the city to receive approval of the proposed lighting. It would not necessarily require the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but certainly authorization of the city.
By who or what body within the city?
Primarily, it would be the Department of Planning.
Yes, staff would
John Young, can you come back on, please?
Well, Mayor Boland, staff would review this based upon ordinance and light level criteria, and the only way to light this sign would be from the front. So, because the letters are not lit.
As it be external, like we require in town center.
Okay, so any lighting that would be done that would necessitate department approval would be 100% consistent with what the lighting that we see in town center, correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So with that, I would make a motion to approve. Sorry, John, for putting you back on. So I'd make a motion to approve the department's recommendation. Thank you for answering my question.
I'll second.
Commissioner Beatty seconds. So we have a motion and a second to approve. This one, is this a voice or is this roll call? It doesn't have the roll call on here.
I would request a roll call on this.
Okay,
one,
so we'll
please.
do a roll call vote. Mr. Newbury.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. We have two other items for consideration. Mr. Newbury, when you're ready.
Request for authorization to post for a public hearing and discussion possible additions regarding short-term rentals in all R residential districts and the NU non-urban residence district, along with any needed accommodations to the definitions section of the same zoning ordinance for the purposes of this consideration. Such are currently prohibited in the city, but such is determined through the use of a number of definitions and their interrelationships, all ward.
Thank you, Mr. Newbury. Mr. Vunich.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as is referenced in the advertisement, short-term rentals in all R and NU districts within the city of Wildwood are prohibited. Typically, they are identified as Airbnbs. The manner that that interpretation is made through is through a series of definitions associated with each of the R districts and the NU district. Oftentimes, we are asked to provide those definitions and how they are interpreted to inquiring residents or property owners. And oftentimes, it is difficult for them to understand how the conclusion is reached. Therefore, in a conversation between the city administrator, Mr. Cross, our city attorney, Mr. Young, and the Department of Planning, the thought was, is instead of making it hard, why don't we make it easy and just add direct language relating to short-term rentals. And so tonight, the city administrator, the city attorney, and the Department of Planning are respectfully requesting a motion and second to authorize the posting of this question or this matter for public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So I guess the request is for a motion and a second. I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion on this.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, all I'm asking is, can we have a public hearing to see if it's worth, if we are doing something wrong by prohibiting it, or if we're doing something right, but if we are doing something right, to make it easier to understand.
Was there a request from an outside entity to allow this?
I would defer to Mr. Young and Mr. Cross. They had conversations with a particular individual.
Mayor Boland.
So I'm going to tag on to your question, Chair Lee, but let's you asked for the city attorney to respond. So John, you want to answer that question?
Certainly. What's happened is there have been several instances where either the department, myself, the city administrator have been asked the city's position on short-term rental facilities and regulations. And each time we've had to provide a detailed analysis regarding the city's prohibition, which in kind of surveying some issues in terms of code enforcement in the city, its lack of apparency in a single location is resulting in potential violations of the ordinance. So the intent here is not to change the code, but to make it simplified so that it would be easy for anyone to understand whether or not what they're proposing to do is compliant or in violation of the code.
Mayor Boland.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just following up on your question. So all of those things taken into cumulative interpretation to synthesize them is the current rule of the city, as it may be codified in several places, that Airbnb is not permissible.
That is correct.
So if I may follow up that question, the intent would be therefore to clarify that position moving forward in a more succinct way.
Correct.
Thank you.
So Mr. Vunich, the allowed uses in each zoning district would then exclude that, is how we would do this.
Well, it's the short-term rental facilities are not authorized now again, I've not explained it well, and Mr. Young did a much better job, but for all intents and purposes, I think a single statement regarding short-term rentals and defining them would be much easier for people to understand and avoid the confusion that we seem to experience when questions arise. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is to hold a public hearing on this. What I would like, rather than just ask the question, I think the approach should be taken that the zoning ordinance says this, and we need to add a statement. If it is going to be maintained as the intent of the ordinance, and there would be a further action required if we're going to change the ordinance to allow it. Mayor Boland?
Well, to your point, I guess my question would be, and this is to the city attorney, if all we need is clarification of an existing rule that is in several different spots, does it necessitate a public hearing, or can you simply come to the commission with a change of language that makes the existing position of the city clearer?
If we're going to change the language in the regulating ordinances, it will require a public hearing. Even if the intent
change may be really not a change ultimately.
correct.
Okay.
Well, what you're
And
saying though is if we change the ordinance text, even if it justifies the position, that we need a public hearing to change the text.
Correct.
So I think we need to word this, and Joe, I'm just throwing this out here, is that the public hearing is to back up the city's ordinance with additional text.
And Mr. Chair, I think the mayor, as well as you, have basically framed the advertisement in that it is to clarify the prohibition, not to accept comments relative to the prohibition.
Mayor Boland.
My apology again, but for interjecting, but I think the essence of a public hearing is that we get testimony and form a conclusion after the public hearing. And so I think and for multiple good reasons. So I think that the motion would simply be that we have the public hearing and we take it from there.
Okay. Motion and a second. So this will be a roll call vote.
I haven't made a motion.
Oh, I thought you did. We'll make a motion and we'll get a second.
I've made enough motions. I'll let someone else make that motion.
All right, Commissioner Beatty.
I'll make a motion to have a public hearing to clarify the city's position on short-term rentals.
Need a second. Councilman Brost.
I don't know if we need an amendment, but what I would say is short-term rentals such as Airbnb et al., whatever they are. So people, when they read it, they understand what short-term rentals mean and what we're talking about here. My 2 cents on that.
I would actually advise against doing that. I've had experience where if you name a specific company, you get cease and desist letters. So calling it by its generic term is preferred.
Okay, could you say for personal hotel rental or something that doesn't name a name? Something like, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but
vacation rentals, I don't know.
Well, we can provide a clarifying statement in addition to short-term rentals. Absolutely.
okay, yeah, do that is what my recommendation is. So people know what they're showing up for and they go, oh, someone's going to put an Airbnb or at all, whatever it is right next door to me. I don't like that, or I love it. And I don't, just so they get the gist of what it really is. So I trust you guys will do that. That's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I think the Commissioner Beatty, you're an accepting of Commissioner Jackson's clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go into a roll call vote on this one.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our second item of consideration is a nominating committee for the commission year and officers, all wards. Mr. Newbury?
Yes, sir. Nominating committee recommendation for the 2021-2022 commission year and its officers, all wards.
Okay, Mr. Vunich, I'll turn it over to you.
Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you know, the commission year is from July to June. And we are at that point where new officers need to be considered and elected. And we do, in our bylaws, have a process that was provided to you as part of the memorandum prepared by the department. So the chair needs to select 4 commission members, not the mayor or the liaison from city council, to form the nominating committee and discuss potential candidates for the 3 positions that are officers. Thank you.
I was writing some notes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Boland, how do we want to do this with my term basically being up?
Well, I was just thinking about that, but I suspect, and Joe or John Young, correct me if I'm wrong, if the bylaws of the commission require that this be on the agenda for this evening, I think we have to proceed with that. And Joe is shaking his head yes. And so I'm assuming what we've done in the past would be the case tonight, which is that anyone who wants to serve on that committee, let you know, other than Councilmember Brost or myself. And then you or whomever may end up being chair will ultimately recommend that committee to the commission. Is that a fair assumption or statement? So with that, I don't think your unfortunate spot of having been on here for 2 terms, which I wish weren't the case, but it is, I don't think that is the tail that wags the dog. I think that the commission would need to move forward with the agenda item, and we will handle it as we do all things in due course.
Okay. So we have those in attendance. Do you want to be on the nominating committee? We do that tonight or make a recommendation for the next one?
Would just let you know that prior to the next meeting, I believe.
Okay.
And whether they're in attendance or not, they can do that.
Okay, great.
And actually, it might be good if we did an email to everyone on the commission to let them know that, for those that weren't here tonight, to put their name in the hat for that.
So everyone think about running for one of these positions. Being chair has been a lot of fun, actually. Commissioner Broyles.
Chair Lee, I sent you a message in regard to the Historic Preservation Commission and
Yes.
requested that I be able to represent planning and zoning on that commission as well for another year.
And I received that, so.
I don't know how that plays into this, but
Well, first we do the officers and then the selection of the other activities like the historic, it would be architectural review board and a few other things that come up throughout the year. Commissioner Jackson.
Okay, I have no dog in the fight, of course, being the inexperienced one. I would just like to point out that in my experience, when you've been gone, Mr. Lee, is that Ms. Helfrey runs a hell of a great meeting. And if someone wanted to strong arm her, that would probably be a really smart move. We're gonna miss not having an engineer that knows all the ins and outs as chair, but can't have an engineer unless Mayor Boland finds an engineer to replace you or something. I'm just saying, Ms. Helfrey, it's pretty good, you guys that are making the decisions. All right, that's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you.
You know, usually when someone makes a comment like that, they become chair.
Not happening. I need to learn a lot more because city stuff goes beyond normal boards.
And that was just a joke.
Okay, I was just making sure I was removing myself before it ever even got started.
Any of you would be great. So what do we, Joe, what do we need to do? Is this just an FYI or is there a motion that's needed or?
Yes, what I would like to do is just inform the chair and members of the commission. Mr. Newbury and I will send out an email tomorrow, just advising everyone if you're interested on being a nominating committee, please let Mr. Lee know before a certain date. We'll try to schedule the nominating committee meeting before the August 2nd meeting so that they can report back at that time.
Okay, sounds good. So moving on, closing remarks. This may be my last meeting, depending on if we can find a replacement for my ward. So it's been a pleasure doing this.
You're a good chair. I've been on a lot of boards. You're a good chair. No kidding.
I want to echo Commissioner Jackson's comments.
Thank you.
Been very beneficial to the city for having you on the board.
Thank you.
If we could, in the minutes, without objection, have a courtesy resolution thanking Chair Lee for not only his time on the commission, but also his service as chair, which has been admirable, commendable, and a very well done job. Without objection, I would ask that the minutes reflect that.
Thank you.
Consider it done, sir.
All right. Well, I will end this and seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to end Chairman Lee's last P&Z meeting.
Yeah, there you go. And the second from Commissioner Beatty. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank
Thanks.
you all.
Bye.